Welcome to Friday. It's August 27th, 2021. Pretty nice weekend coming up, folks, for really most of the Intermountain West and the High Plains region. Going to have a little bit of a September-like feel to the weather pattern this weekend with drier air and temperatures that I would say are going to be very comfortable. We'll have some 80s, some lower 90s in Colorado and some of the southern areas, but Montana and Wyoming and Idaho and parts of Utah, just 70s and 80s. As well as the western Dakotas, so really not bad at all. Isolated thunderstorms are possible. We might have some thunderstorms across Montana and northern Wyoming this weekend. A few isolated thunderstorms in Colorado's high country and southern parts of Wyoming this weekend, but it's going to be more often than not for most of you dry, but there could also be one or two isolated thunderstorms around. Now we're going to have a warm-up early next week. Temperatures, after being a little bit cooler this weekend, will go back up as we get into Monday and Tuesday. We're going to be talking about two hurricanes. Ida, headed towards the Gulf Coast and Louisiana. And this is going to be a hurricane that no one's going to be hearing about because Ida will be making all the headlines. But Nora is going to be a Pacific hurricane that is going to have, or let's say potentially could have, a big impact on the weather in the western United States come the middle of next week. We hinted at that yesterday, and we'll talk about more of that today. Here's today's upper level chart at 500 millibars or 18,000 feet. You can see the waviness as we see systems continuing to come through. So we've got a trough over southern Canada, which is going to drag a cool front through the region, making it a little bit breezy today. And this is going to bring cooler, drier air in to start the weekend, suppressing the high pressure off to our south. We've got this other trough back up here in the Aleutians, and this is going to play a role in our weather later. We'll talk about that here in a minute. So here's Tropical Storm Ida right now. And with this high right here and the clockwise spin around it, and this trough moving across the northern plain states, well, it's going to be a foregone conclusion that basically a road or a highway is being built for Ida to just come right through here. So the confidence in the track of Ida is going to be higher than normal, as it's just a perfect setup for that hurricane to be drawn up into Louisiana later this weekend and into early next week. Now let's take a look at the satellite imagery. I'm showing you a satellite photo much further south than normal because this is where our weather makers are coming from. Here's Tropical Storm Ida right here, and then here is Tropical Storm Nora. So as I said, we're going to see that go right towards Louisiana by later in the weekend. Also by later in the weekend, Nora is going to go right into the Gulf of California here as it develops and becomes a hurricane and goes northward. So we have dueling systems. We've got one in the Gulf of Mexico, and on the other side of Mexico, in the eastern Pacific, we have another hurricane. So this will be playing a really big role in the weather across the lower 48 states in the coming days. So here's Ida right now, and if you look at the track, it becomes a hurricane by tomorrow afternoon, and is going to be reaching Louisiana coast overnight Sunday into Monday morning as a pretty strong hurricane. Likely it's going to be a Category 3, maybe a Category 4, but certainly a Category 3. These are the sustained winds as we get into overnight Sunday into Monday morning, and these are the peak wind gusts being forecasted with the hurricane as it makes landfall. So you can see 123, 117, 105. So this is going to be a big weather maker. Now, the only good news about the Ida situation is it's going to be a very fast-moving hurricane that will sometimes limit the amount and the extent of the flooding, but it's going to be a major hurricane nonetheless. As you take a look at the rainfall totals, you can see very impressive rain totals. It would be more if the hurricane was slower, and let's hope it doesn't slow down. It probably won't. Now, let's look at Nora. This is where Nora is right now, off the southwest coast of Mexico. Right now, it is a tropical storm. But as we go forward, see how it goes right up into the Gulf of California. Now, a lot of times, in fact, 9 out of 10 times, what these southwest or west coast Mexico hurricanes do is they tend to ride up near the coast, then they curve back out to the west into the Pacific. They dissipate, and really, once they get off the coast, they really don't affect anybody except shipping lanes. And they just tend to always, not always, but most of the time go out that way. What's interesting about the situation that we have with Nora is that if it can get further and further north, higher north in latitude, then the opportunity for storms or fronts to the north to pull the leftovers, or what is left of Nora, into North America gets a little bit higher. And that is a scenario that is likely going to unfold, or at least is something that we're seeing on the modeling. Again, this doesn't always happen. In fact, this is more often not the case. But by Sunday afternoon, here's Ida, here's Nora, and here's that trough, that next trough coming into the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. As we have mentioned in other podcasts, hurricanes and tropical storms are always attracted to areas of low pressure like magnets. So what is likely going to happen is Ida is going to get hooked up with this guy here and want to go up and curve out like this, while Nora is going to be drawn to this trough coming into the Pacific Northwest, which means we might see what is left of Nora, its moisture, its remnants, get up into the southwestern United States by early next week. This is by Tuesday morning. This broad trough of low pressure right here is going to help draw the remnants up like this as we go on into Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday of next week, with the remnants of Ida going into the upper Midwest as we get on into Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, if that happens, if we see that happen, and yesterday I put a big question mark on the screen, and I'm going to do that again today. However, we're seeing more and more trends in the modeling that this will happen. This happens maybe about 8 out of 10 times when the leftovers of hurricanes can come up in the western United States. Most of the time they go out here. So this could still happen. However, if the timing remains the same, what I'm showing you is the water vapor forecast for Thursday of next week. And starting really as early as Tuesday night, but especially Wednesday, Thursday, we could see some deep subtropical moisture come in. Now, some folks may say, well, it's a resurgence of the monsoon. And in some instances, yes, you could say this. But really what it is the leftovers of Nora. And if this happens, we could end up with a high potential of really heavy rain, especially here. Even the deserts of Southern California could get into the act. And then the real question after that is, how deep to the north will the deeper moisture go? Will it get all the way into Wyoming, or will it stay in the Four Corners area of Colorado? A lot of times it's pretty difficult for the remains of a hurricane to get up to, let's say, as far north as Casper, but it has happened. But in this area right here, confidence is growing. There could be some big rains towards the middle of next week. And then on the edges, as you can see, this deeper moisture gets into western Nebraska as well, northwest Kansas, eastern Colorado, then Iowa. So we'll put a big question mark on it. Certainly by Monday, we're going to have a lot more, but don't ignore Nora, even though Ida is going to get all the headlines, at least when it comes to the weather here in the western United States. Have yourself a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you on Monday.